From the sandy beaches of Gulf Shores, Alabama, all the way over to high top Rocket City, USA, to the iconic famed studios in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, to right here in my own backyard of Aniana, where we hold the Covered Bridge Festival. Welcome to the Daily Factor, my God, my country, and me, with your host, Dailey. So come on in, pull up a chair, and have a seat, and let's talk the Daily Factor. Welcome to the Daily Factor, my God, my country, and me. I'm your host, Dailey. When the Founding Fathers drafted the Declaration of Independence, they were freeing the colonies from the tyranny of British rule. The Founding Fathers were visionaries. By articulating the principles of liberty and self-governance that would define a new nation, they established a framework for a new form of government with a system of checks and balances, and by also establishing the fundamental principles of liberty, equality, and self-government. I am often reminded of the three bold words at the beginning of our Constitution. They stand out more than any of the other words, but they're not more important. Those three words are self-evident today. We, the people. The Constitution not only gave us the framework for a new nation, it gave us the vision and the structure for that new government, which would be tested time and time again. The Constitution gave structure and form to our new nation by creating the framework for our three branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branches, all working independently of the other, because the Founding Fathers knew we as a new nation would make mistakes. Yet they gave us guidance and a way to correct those mistakes. Oftentimes, much like a newborn baby must learn to crawl before it can walk, failure was inevitable. But learning from those failures is what makes us strong. On tonight's show, we will examine one particular branch of our government, the judicial branch, and how our courts use plea deals, all in the name of justice. Or is it? Forgive me for the civics lesson, but please bear with me, because it's important to understand how our government is structured and functions, especially our judicial system in the courts. Oftentimes, justice can be a two-edged sword, because what may seem to be justice for one person may not be for another. Plea deals have been around for a long time. In fact, those type of deals have been around since the first established Supreme Court in 1789 under what was known as the Judiciary Act of 1789. However, the first actual plea deal, according to historians, was in 1881 when Albert McKenzie pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge of embezzlement. Although some have even speculated that plea deals were present during the Salem witch trials, where leniency was offered in exchange for a confession. In today's modern judicial system, a large number of cases are resolved through some sort of plea deal, and those are common and routine practices in everyday court. When we return, we will define what a plea deal is in general terms, and we will also examine three high-profile cases in which plea deals were offered. Two out of the three cases, we will examine how the death penalty applied as punishment if the alleged person is convicted. So stay tuned, and we will be right back on the Daily Factor. My God, my country, and me. Welcome to the Daily Factor, my God, my country, and me, with your host, Dailey. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. You can also find us on our YouTube channel, The Daily Factor. So come on in, pull up a chair and have a seat, and let's have a conversation on The Daily Factor. Welcome back to the Daily Factor, my God, my country, and me. I'm your host, Dailey. We were discussing how plea deals came about. Let's define what a plea deal is in general terms. When a person has been charged or indicted for a criminal offense, they can accept a plea of guilty in exchange for a lesser criminal charge or a lesser sentence as when it comes to time served. So let's look at three cases that involve plea deals. The first one is from August 5th, 2024, in which the federal government offered a plea deal to 9/11 mastermind and two of his accomplices. The case was being handled through a military commission. A day or so after the plea deal made the mainstream media outlets and was aired, Secretary of Austin pulled the plug on the deal, citing he had no knowledge of any such deal. Senator Durbin posted on X that the Secretary of Defense should reinstate the deal, saying it denies the finality and justice to the families of 9/11 attacks. Just recently, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that Secretary of Defense Austin was within the scope of his power, and he had the power to withdraw that deal. Was it justice or injustice? Case number two. As reported by the AP News on July 26, 2023, former President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, was offered a plea deal that basically was that if he pled guilty to tax evasion, $1.4 million, they would separate the gun charge and the ATF violations in exchange for 2 years probation. That plea deal was pulled by the judge because she had concerns. But we ultimately know that President Biden pardoned his son. And you remember what the campaign slogan was in 2024. No one is above the law. Was it justice or injustice? Now, the third case I want to discuss is it's not close to home, but it occurred 3 years ago, and the outcome just came out this week. In 2022, 4 Idaho college students were brutally stabbed to death in their home as they slept. Yes, I'm referring to the Idaho massacre. Brian Koberger, who was studying for a PhD, was arrested and charged in connection with the murders. The prosecution was seeking the death penalty in the case. The evidence, while overwhelming, but yet no murder weapon could be found, they knew that a K-bar knife was used. However, Koberger's DNA was found on a knife sheath which was located under the body of one of the victims. This was, in my view, the smoking gun that sealed the case. Because how can you refute your DNA being in that house? Now, the victims, some of them accepted the plea deal, were not happy, but there was one family that was highly upset about the plea deal because they didn't think it was justice. The families, from what I've read, as I said, some of them accepted it, and one father was highly upset about it. So was this plea deal justice, or was it injustice? When we come back, I will have some final thoughts and comments. Y'all stay tuned. I'll be right back on the Daily Factor, My God, My Country, and Me. Welcome to the Daily Factor, My God, My Country, and Me, with your host, Dailey. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. You can also find us on our YouTube channel, The Daily Factor. So come on in, pull up a chair and have a seat, and let's have a conversation on The Daily Factor. Welcome back to the Daily Factor, My God, My Country, and Me. In these cases that I have laid out, technically and legally, justice was served by the acceptance of a plea deal. The person charged pled guilty to the charges, so in theory and in legally and technically, justice was served. But what about justice for those who are left behind to deal with the aftermath? Did the families get justice? Nothing will bring back the loss of life of a loved one, but does it bring closure? You know, in my 37 years of law enforcement, I have seen and have had plea deals go in and out the door. I mean, it's like a revolving door. Now, I will say this. When you have a case docket or a court docket that is packed with cases, you have to run that court as quickly and smoothly as possible. You want justice served for all the parties involved. And a lot of times, plea deals help that court run smoothly. It's a quick way to get a case resolved where both parties are, for lack of a better term, happy about it. They both have considered the options, and now they accept. I'd rather not go to jail if I can get probation on a plea deal. Now, there's one thing I want to be very mindful of. In case number one that involved the 9/11 attack mastermind, the death penalty was on the table. If he was convicted, he would have gotten the death penalty. But the plea deal was for him not to get the death penalty if he pled guilty to it. That's why Secretary of Defense Austin withdrew the plea deal, because he didn't feel it was justice for the families of the victims of 9/11. I mean, you got to remember 9/11. We had two planes hit the towers. We had one plane hit the Pentagon. And we had one plane where we believe that the passengers stood up to terrorists, and they would much rather go down and crash and possibly die rather than the terrorists use that plane to hurt anyone else. Because I strongly believe that plane was headed toward Washington, D.C. Now, it could have been that the one that hit the Pentagon was aimed for the Capitol, but it overflew its mark. Who knows? I don't know. Now, case number two, which was the Hunter Biden case. We all know what happened there. We all know why, and I'm not going to discuss it any further. Now, it doesn't matter whether you agree with me or not, but plea deals happen every day in our life. Do I believe he should have gotten a pardon? That's between a father and son. I'm not in that position, but as a father, I know we do all that we can do for our children. I mean, irregardless, we try to do all that we can do. But hopefully we teach our children the difference between right and wrong and how to stand on their own 2 feet. I know that my son is standing on his own 2 feet with 4 children, and I respect what he does. I respect how he's raised his children, which are my grandchildren. I'm very grateful for that. And son, you're doing an outstanding job. The third case, which involved the Idaho massacres. Now, all throughout this case, the defense has made various motions, whether he's autistic, has the mental capacity. Obviously, if he's getting a PhD, he has the mental forethought and the mental capabilities to understand between right and wrong. And also, how do you account for his DNA being in that house? Maybe some of you have heard how he knew these 4 college students. I have yet to hear how he knew them. But irregardless, if you didn't do it, how is your DNA in that house? Now, you can shout conspiracy theorists until you're blue in the face that somebody borrowed his knife and his DNA was in it. Now, he claims there were 2 other DNAs in the house. There's college kids that live in there. Yeah, there's going to be other DNA in the house. They may have friends over. I don't know. I wasn't there. But the evidence that I have read about so far, kind of hard to say that you weren't there when your phone pinged in the area, your car was seen in the area, and now your DNA is in the crime scene, up under one of the victims, no less. So in these 3 cases, do you believe justice was served, or was there injustice? Y'all let me know. You can email me at thedailyfactor@gmail.com. If you go over to my YouTube channel, The Daily Factor, be sure to hit that subscribe button and like and leave me a comment about what you thought about the show. You can also hear the show and watch the show on Spotify. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and right here on The Daily Factor. My God, my country, and me. Y'all have a good night. God bless. Take care. Welcome to The Daily Factor. My God, my country, and me. With your host, Dailey. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. You can also find us on our YouTube channel, The Daily Factor. So come on in, pull up a chair and have a seat, and let's have a conversation on The Daily Factor.